Hello everyone, I've uploaded a few videos so far, but they haven't gotten many views. They didn't get many views, but the video that did relatively well got 18 views. 18 views. That means my other videos got even fewer views. Most of them got around 10 views. Anyway, 18 was the highest, and that video was about Korea. It was Korea-related content. So now I'm going to talk about Korea. Korea, first of all, I was born in Korea. I was born in a Korean city called Daegu. Daegu is a large city that was traditionally called Korea's third largest city. Today, based on administrative population, it is the fourth largest city after Seoul, Busan, and Incheon. Anyway, it's a very large city in South Korea, in the south, I mean. So I was born in Daegu, and I guess you could call me a person from Daegu. The reason I was born there is that my father and mother met in Daegu. My father grew up in the countryside near Daegu, while my mother grew up in Daegu from a young age. They eventually got married, but they didn't date for a long time before getting married, as people often imagine couples doing in the United States or Europe. They got married through matchmaking. Basically, a matchmaker would tell my grandmother and my maternal grandmother, there's a decent man, or there's a decent woman, why don't they meet? Then the man and woman would have what Koreans call a seon, which is a formal matchmaking meeting. They would meet, talk to each other, and then meet a few more times. If they thought the other person was decent enough, they would get married. That's how my parents got married. My father went on a lot of these matchmaking meetings. He said he went on about 30 of them, although I don't know if it was really exactly 30. Anyway, I guess my father was quite picky. He must have been very particular about women, so he went on a lot of matchmaking dates. My mother went on maybe 3 of them. I think she met my father on her third one and decided, well, he's decent enough, and married him. My father looked at many things when meeting women. He cared a lot about their appearance, as well as various other conditions. Once, he had a matchmaking meeting with a woman who sold cosmetics. I don't know whether she earned a lot of money, but she had a job, and having a job itself could have been considered a good quality for a woman at that time. Back then, it was much more common for women to stop working after getting married and for only the man to have a job. That was the social atmosphere in South Korea at the time. Anyway, this woman had a job, earned some money, and was apparently quite attractive. She was also tall. So my father liked her at first, and she apparently liked him too. But my father rejected her because he wanted to meet an even better woman. After that, however, he continued meeting other women and couldn't find anyone as good as her. So eventually, according to my father, he had no choice but to marry my mother, who was at least decent enough. Anyway, that's the story he told us. But honestly, I don't know whether I should upload this story. Wouldn't my mother feel offended if she watched this? I don't know. If my girlfriend said something like that about me, I would consider it serious enough to break up with her immediately. But my mother doesn't seem to get that angry about stories like this. Maybe it has something to do with the traditional patriarchal culture of Korea in the past. If a young woman today heard something like that, she might get extremely angry. Of course, some women might be fine with it. Everyone has different values. Anyway, that's how it is. So I thought it might be interesting to make today's topic about the customs of old Korea and what Korea was like in the past. I was born in 1993, while my parents were born in 1960 and 1963. So I think it could be interesting to talk about what Korean people of their generation were like and what kind of environment they lived in. When my father was a child, Korea was extremely poor. South Korea. I mean, it was really poor. You can probably find the numbers if you search for things like GDP or GDP per capita. My father says that when he was young, even getting enough food to eat wasn't easy. It was so poor that it's difficult to imagine from today's perspective. As far as I know, South Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world at the time. There was even a period after the Korean War when South Korea was economically poorer than North Korea. So it was a really, really poor country. That means people of my father's generation experienced an incredibly dramatic period of change. Today, Korea is a wealthy country. It has developed enough that you can call it a wealthy country. When I checked, South Korea's GDP per capita seemed to be around a similar level to that of the Czech Republic. I've traveled to the Czech Republic before, and the Czech Republic is also a wealthy country. It felt somewhat similar to Korea. Anyway, that's how it seems to me. But I don't really know what I should say about Korea to make it interesting for you. Because I was born and raised in Korea, I don't know which parts of Korea would feel new or unusual to you. I don't really know how you see Korea, but Korea's economic development really is incredible. Korea used to be a country that didn't know how to manufacture cars or build large ships. Now Korea makes cars and builds ships. It also makes semiconductors and many other things. Korea manufactures almost everything now. But when my father was young, those industries barely existed. There was a famous Korean businessman named Chung Ju-young. He was the founder of Hyundai. He went to the United Kingdom and said, "I'm going to build a shipyard in Korea, so please lend me the money." But at that time, Korea had no major shipyards and almost no experience building large ships. From the British perspective, they probably wondered why they should lend money to a country with no infrastructure, limited technology, and almost no experience. Then Chung Ju-young showed them a Korean 500 won banknote with a picture of a turtle ship on it. A turtle ship was a Korean warship used during the Joseon period. It was a battleship. It was used about 400 years ago, and some people call it the world's first ironclad warship. I'm not sure whether it was truly the first, because I believe that claim is still debated. Anyway, Chung Ju-young showed them the banknote and basically said this: "Our country has been building ships like this since ancient times. If you lend me the money, I will build a shipyard." He persuaded the chairman of the British company, Appledore, and Barclays Bank eventually approved the loan. They really started with almost nothing. They lacked capital, infrastructure, technology, and experience. But somehow, they built a shipbuilding industry through sheer determination. When they began building the shipyard, they constructed the shipyard and the ships at the same time. They didn't finish the shipyard first and then start building ships. They began constructing the ships they had already received orders for, while the shipyard itself was still under construction. When I first heard this story, I thought, was this some kind of scam? But they didn't sell the ships by lying. They genuinely constructed the shipyard and the ships simultaneously. Building ships before the shipyard was even finished was an incredibly reckless and remarkable thing to do. That's how Korea created these industries. It began mass producing cars and building ships to sell to other countries. Those business people, together with the countless workers who worked under them, helped turn South Korea into the wealthy country it is today. They really built it through sheer force and determination. Maybe that's one reason working in South Korea can still be extremely difficult. The workload in South Korea can be very intense. If you're thinking about working in South Korea, there may not be that many jobs available to foreigners other than teaching English. Of course, starting a business might be fine. Korean people work extremely hard, so running a business in that kind of environment might have some advantages. But if you're employed as a worker under a Korean employer, it might be more difficult than working in some other countries. At least that's what I think. That's all for today. Thank you.